Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
Hello, I'm Jeff Kellam, your elderly host on this Encounter program. I don't think of myself as being an old guy, but every once in a while you're reminded. I fell off my bicycle after a 25-mile bike trip a couple of weeks ago, and I'm still so sore. And I went to the doctor to make sure I didn't have a broken bone or something, and she said, you are an older person, so this will take a little bit longer to heal. Every once in a while, we're reminded. Many years ago, I did an interview with an older person, probably older than I am now, and he was talking about how as he ages, he realizes how much like a child he is, almost a toddler. He said it's a good idea for him to wear a little bib when he eats because he tended to dribble a little bit. He had to be careful as he walked from one room to another that he didn't trip over something because his balance isn't just right. And he wasn't into adult diapers yet, but he said, the time might come. The older I get, the more vulnerable I feel, he said. We're going to be talking about elder abuse and the vulnerability of our elders. Honoring our elders is an ancient value, and it's one that reminds us that we have folks to take care of. We're not all vulnerable all the time, but there are many folks who need that extra attention and extra care. And sometimes we as individuals or as a community have a hard time providing that. So we have two guests with us today to talk about elder abuse. And before you dismiss this as not your problem, just imagine maybe talking to a neighbor who reacted with anger or frustration toward an elderly person in their own home. Or perhaps you visited a place where someone who is a professional taking care of someone maybe acted inappropriately out of, again, frustration or maybe just meanness. And sometimes elder abuse isn't something we've done or said, but something we've neglected to do or to say. So let me introduce our two guests, and then we'll talk about some of the issues involved here. First, Lisa Schuhle, and I haven't memorized your extensive title, the Program Manager of the Broome County Office on Aging.
Yes.
So welcome to Encounter. And Rebecca Bradley. Rebecca is the Assistant Director of Action for Older Persons. And it turns out, we got your names separately, but it turns out you're the co-chairs of the Elder Abuse Prevention Committee, which is related to, I hope you're taking notes, Family Violence Prevention Council.
Yes. That is
well,
correct.
There you go. So let's simply begin by maybe talking about what is elder abuse. I made a couple of passing references to it, but what are some examples of elder abuse in our community?
Well, when we talk about elder abuse, there's a lot of different components of it. It can be financial, which is one of the biggest things that we're seeing in this community and across the country right now, financial abuse of older people. We can get into that a little bit later. There is physical abuse. There's neglect that caregivers or family members do to their loved ones that need extra help. And there's self-neglect. And then there's also emotional abuse that can go on. And I know that Rebecca has a lot of examples, especially about the emotional abuse that she sees through her ombudsman program that she works with.
Yes, I'd forgotten that you're an ombudsman. I have trouble saying that.
People get caught up on the word. It's Swedish. It means citizen advocate, and people tend to like when I do that.
I was just going to say, advocate would be so much easier.
It would, yeah.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about that. What does it mean to be an advocate for the vulnerable or the aging?
My particular program, because there are different variations of ombudsman, works for people that live in nursing homes, assisted living, adult care, and certified family type homes. And we are advocates for those who have essentially, we want to empower them. That's the overall goal of the program, is to empower the resident or the resident's family, if they are the appropriate person to do so, to speak up and say, I'm not happy with something that might be occurring. Because sometimes they'll call me and they'll say things, and I'll say, well, did you let anybody know?
Yeah.
And they hadn't.
Yeah.
So a facility can't really rectify a situation that they don't know exists. So it's empowering them to advocate for themselves first. But if they feel like they're not getting the resolution that they want, they then request us to come in, and we do get authorized to advocate on their behalf. And from then we start trying to work to find out what the situation really is and troubleshoot if necessary. But a lot of times I'm finding it's mediation.
Yeah.
It's a lot of mediation work, because somebody might have hurt someone else's feelings, someone might have said something, there's fingers being pointed, and in the middle is the resident, and everyone kind of forgot to focus all of their energy on them, because that's why we're all together.
Yeah.
So it's me kind of redirecting to what the real issue is. Let's correct it and let's everybody move forward.
And how did you get in that position to become that kind of mediator to help bring this about?
Well, I was in college to work in television, and I got the opportunity to become a service assistant at a local nursing home when I was 20. And I really enjoyed working with that demographic. And then that position wasn't going to be around anymore, so they were like, okay, well, we can train you to be an aide. And so I did that for quite a few years, working multiple shifts. And when you work in those facilities for as long as you do, you start to know what happens on different shifts and what's going on. I then was given the opportunity to work in a home agency, not only hiring and training people, but making sure that the people we're servicing are satisfied, they're getting what they need. And that kind of taught me how to learn about the community base, what's around, what's available to people. And then the opportunity came to move over to AOP, Action for Older Persons, and I jumped on it because I had always wanted to work there. So they interviewed me. I had to be approved through the state, obviously, because it's a state subcontract. And I've been doing that for over 4 years now.
Yeah.
And we service 4 counties right now: Broome, Delaware, Shenango, and Tioga.
Oh, so you've got quite a wide area to work in.
I do, but luckily I have a very amazing group of core volunteers who go out and they work with those residents. They're certified. They work with me one-on-one, and I'm in the field quite a bit working with them to make sure that all the little boxes are checked.
And Lisa, you're working with the Center on Aging, the Office on
Office
Aging.
for Aging, yeah.
And as you were growing up, you didn't think, well, gosh, when I grow up, I hope I can work with the Office on Aging. Or did you?
Well, actually, I've worked with older adults since high school.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know what I wanted to do, and you know how they tell you in the guidance office, well, go out and volunteer and do stuff. So I went to our local retirement community, and I volunteered there, and I found that I loved it. So I went to college to be an activities director originally at a facility, and then from there I got hired at the Office for Aging and moved around to different programs, and right now I work in the Information and Assistance Unit as the program manager, and we have a wide variety of programs, and it's a lot of fun and it's very rewarding. There for a while, when I went back to school, I actually worked with teens and decided that really wasn't my bag, that I really loved the older people, and I really enjoy it. And in this position, I'm able to help quite a few people through the Office for Aging, with the topic that we're talking about today. We try to keep people in the community as much as possible. We try to put in services that we can to help alleviate some of these abuse issues that do go on, and we're really here to support people in the community and to stay in the community as long as possible.
Now, you were talking about different forms that elder abuse takes, and you mentioned financial abuse, and that was way down on my list of where I would have started. How do you define financial abuse, and could you give an example of that?
Well, sometimes older people, maybe a distant relative or a friend of the family or somebody is helping them in the home, or it could just be somebody that they met at the grocery store or a drugstore and they befriended the older person, and sometimes all it takes is one time for that person to give their PIN number out because maybe they're not feeling well and they need their medicine from the drugstore, and they say, oh, could you please go or somebody that's really not looking at the best interest of the older person goes and takes money out of their account, is able to see how much money they have, and then just continuously does that. We get calls, the Department of Social Services with their Adult Protective Unit gets calls every week, almost every day probably, from local banks and financial facilities that they actually red flag some of these people when they see suspicious activities in their accounts. And what we found is sometimes they work with law enforcement to, charge these people with a crime.
Yep.
And other times the older people, they don't want to charge the person.
Especially if it's a family member.
Exactly. Yeah. And even if it's a friend of their son's that's taking care of them, if I have him arrested, then he's not going to take care of me anymore. Part of the problem with even taking large or small amounts of money is it can impact their ability to either pay for their care or to eventually, if they need to go into a nursing home and all their money has been spent, there is a 5-year look back to get on Medicaid in the facility. So it is a big problem, and it's a growing problem, and some people might get a few $1,000s stolen from them, and other people have gotten tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars taken from them. And once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah, and it's a matter of your financial security, but also the trust that's broken down between, especially a caregiver, by definition, who's supposed to be watching out for you, and instead they're taking advantage.
Yeah.
And then some of the other things that I think come to mind more quickly than that are just physical abuse, that striking out in anger or frustration. This can happen anywhere, and you don't have to be an evil or mean person to just feel at some point fed up and you strike out.
Taking care of a loved one is extremely hard, and when you're in a situation where mom or dad, grandma or grandpa, whoever needs that care, and a lot of them will say, I don't want to go anywhere, I want to stay home. And to keep them home is a lot tougher than people think. It's not you get up in the morning, you made sure grandma took her pills, you went to work, you came home, you had dinner. There's this whole time span that's going by where nobody knows what's happening in that house.
Yeah.
Is the individual having some cognition gaps? Is there some confusion? Do they have access to the stove? Do you actually know they're taking their pills? One of the big things that we see is dehydration and malnutrition, and that's because they're not sure what's happening. They're not sure what's going on. And it's not because they're intentionally doing it, but as we age, we're aging for longer periods of time. People are, healthier for longer periods of time, and then it's almost like all of a sudden they need help. And people are still working, and they have lives, and they have kids, and they have to continue to pay for their own homes. So they can't just put everything on the back burner and just stay home now and take care of mom or dad. So they're trying to piece it all together. They're trying to do the best that they can. And sometimes they're missing these little moments. And they, the individual themselves will have some finances, but won't allow for care to come in because that's their money. And they're not going to spend that money because they worked really hard for it, and that's not what it's for. And maybe they want to leave some to their kids, or they've decided they're going to do other things with it. And what they're really doing is, in the long run, they're making it harder for them to improve and to kind of stay the course.
Yes.
Because that little bit of help in the beginning might have prevented something severe that is going to be a hospitalization, be skilled nursing for a period of time. And it's having that moment and that education, which is so important to what we do, to make sure people are aware that there are avenues, there are things to look into.